All right, what is up, y'all? Will here with Schedulefly, and this is another episode of the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, brought to you by us here at Schedulefly. Super simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. And in today's time, I'd say all at a low price point. We haven't raised our prices since 2007. So if you're on pencil and paper or Excel and you need a easy, efficient way to communicate with your staff and make life better for you and for them and save yourself a lot of time and a lot of headaches, 30-day free trial at schedulefly.com. Check us out. Or if you are on another of these fine scheduling softwares and haven't heard about Schedulefly, but you're paying a lot of money and have a lot of bells and whistles and you just kind of need to schedule and communicate in a simple way, check us out. 30-day free trial. We are at Schedulefly. All right. So here we go with my man Ryan from Fixe out there in California, coast to coast interview today. Ryan, thanks for joining and just take a minute and introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me, Will. Yeah, my name's Ryan Handel. I founded Fixe back in 2019. I'm out here in Los Angeles. I own restaurants myself, and basically I was sick and tired of the bookkeeping I was receiving at a restaurant. Of course, bookkeeping is probably the last thing you do when you try to open up a restaurant, but unfortunately, it's a necessary evil in order to, make the wheels go, so to speak. So in 2019, I kind of got fed up with everything and thought there was a better way to attack the bookkeeping and accounting. And so that's when we started Fixe. We kind of take a much more tech forward focus to our bookkeeping and accounting. We focus on QuickBooks Online and enhancing everything that QBO can do for a restaurant. We try to streamline the price as low as we can because we don't think bookkeeping should cost an arm and a leg if a lot of things are automated coupled with the expertise that we could provide in the industry. So, I still own restaurants today. It's obviously something how I, grew up in this industry, but Fixe is obviously the thing that I focus in a lot and we try to help restaurants grow.
Oh, okay, awesome. I love it. Tell me, let's get started just with your backstory and starting in restaurants and how and when you get dialed into hospitality in the first place.
Yeah, so it all started like when I was really young. My parents asked like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to open up restaurants." And like, what the hell? Like our family's not in restaurants. Why do you want to do it? So, I was able. My dad said like, "Look, if you're gonna work in restaurant, if you want to go into restaurants, you should probably work in one first." So through some
Yeah.
connections, I got a job at a pretty high profile restaurant over a summer as like a prep cook. And then I went to like the Cornell Hotel and Hospitality School. So obviously it was great, great background. And then right after Cornell, I kind of jumped right in and started my management career. So started with a chain out here in LA called Daily Grill. They got to about 20 or 30 locations. I was like the GM of a couple of locations. And then finally in 2009, 2010, I was like, I got to go off on my own. So I started my first restaurant and I'd always wanted to go on a fast casual. I never wanted to do fine dining. At the time, Chipotle was like, up and coming. I was like, oh, I want to be the next Chipotle founder. I ended up opening up my spot. I got it to like 5 locations. It was called Simple Things. It was a sandwich and pie shop out in LA. And I thought it was, we did well. But, you know, you do your best and you see what you can make out of it. And unfortunately with COVID, when that ended up coming around, it kind of killed a lot of the business because so much of my business was catering and to-go orders and office catering. So fortunately, like I mentioned, back in 2019, before COVID, I had started Fixe. And so that's where we kind of got off and running. And so I was running my own restaurants for about 5 years or so. I mean, not 5 years. I got to 5 locations, got it until about 2019. And then we started Fixe. And I think the last piece of the story is that my first client in Fixe outside of my own restaurants was this taco chain called Tacos 1986. And Victor, my now partner, who was just like a card on the side of the road in Los Angeles, was doing like 70,000 a month. I was like, great, Jesus, you guys have something here. So I ended up partnering up with Victor, helping him expand that. And so still heavily involved in that chain, Tacos 1986 out here in LA. But that's kind of like my restaurant kind of story of how I've grown up in this industry.
It's pretty wild, man. Did you okay, so then Simple, so you shut down Simple Things or did you sell it or?
Yeah, so I had at the time I had four location. One location was like a licensed deal in Santa Monica that closed long before COVID. So I had four locations left. Two of those locations I actually converted to Tacos 1986s. So those locations are still there. They're just a Tacos 86. One of the locations I converted to a wine bar that's now called Melanie Wine Bar over kind of in the West Hollywood area. Still ticking along, doing well. And then the last location in Burbank, we shut down. We had to shut it down during COVID. So that was a great location for us, but it was right next to all the movie studios. And all the movie studios took forever to get back up and running.
We ironically, I lived in Burbank. I've been in North Carolina my whole life. I live not even 2 years. I was on the corner of Hollywood Way and Verdugo, and Park Point appointments out in apartments out there in Burbank. Well, not far from probably what street was that?
We were on Riverside Drive, kind of
Yeah,
close to Bob's Big Boy over in like Toluca Lake, Burbank border, right
yeah.
across from like the Warner Brothers Studios lot.
I know exactly where that is, man.
Yeah.
Cool, gotcha. All
Yeah.
right. So you got okay. So what were you doing for bookkeeping and accounting prior to Fixe? Were you just is it like just using QuickBooks or whatever? Or
Good question. Yeah. So when I was always like a numbers dude, I had always been like very much in tune and I was always good with math and stuff like that. So I tried doing it on my own on when I first opened a restaurant. That was a terrible, terrible mess. So then I ended up hiring a couple of firms. I'd had one firm, then I transferred to another. They were doing it all on QuickBooks Desktop, I believe. I was paying a lot of money, like $1,500 a month per location. And right at that time, and I'm sure, with a company like yours, like Schedulefly, the restaurant industry is kind of, it wasn't that up to date on technology. And so once I started finding some more technology to help with the bookkeeping process with restaurants, I tried introducing that to the owner of the firm that I was using, and he said, like, hey, look, this may save us time and money, but we gotta, learn the software. So we're not gonna reduce our price and we're gonna make you pay for it. And I was like, I told him like go kick rocks, and that's where it kind of all started. But yes, I was using other firms. And so between the four locations, I was spending about $6,000 a month on the bookkeeping and accounting, plus like other probably softwares that I had to pay on top of it.
gotcha. Okay. And what did you do? Did you hire somebody to write code for you, or did you figure it out yourself, or how did you get it developed?
So basically, my wife's cousin, who's my partner now, Scott, he's in Boston and he's older. He's already like, made businesses and sold them, and he's kind of taking it easy, doing financial management, private, family financial management, bookkeeping. So finally I said to Scott, like, hey, dude, I need you to take over the bookkeeping. And he said, Ryan, I know nothing about restaurants, but I know about bookkeeping and I can figure out some softwares that we can use. And I have an engineer that we could outsource. And I was like, cool, you take care of that. I know everything about restaurants. And then we kind of put it together, brought it into QuickBooks Online, which was at that time, it had been out for a while, but with not much, success. I would say it wasn't readily accepted in our industry. So then when we brought it into online and we kind of figured out how to set it up correctly and we integrated other softwares and a little bit of our own, all of a sudden I was like managing my books with like 5 minutes a day of work. And I was like, oh, wow. That's like when the light bulb went off. Like, we should start doing this for other restaurants. And so that's how it all started.
Okay. So you guys got this thing going. It was working in your restaurant. And then you formed this business and you got to figure out, okay, how do we go out and get other restaurants to use this? And assuming your focus is it on SMB or like, what's the perfect size customer for y'all?
I think, as I learned in sales, like the acronyms, the ICP, the ideal customer profile, I would say is like 2 to 10 units right now. I mean, I think if you were to talk to my sales guy, Matt Greenberg, he would say, hey, let's push it further to 20 or 30 units, and that's cool too. But ultimately, when we started, it was SMBs, and we've been slowly moving the market because my whole goal with Fixe is I think every single restaurant starts their financial journey on QuickBooks Online. And there is there's a thought that QuickBooks can only do so much before you have to graduate from it. But in my opinion, with our software and our dashboard, we can help restaurants kind of prolong that experience and to help really convert their QuickBooks file into a restaurant specific dashboard. So we have clients that are like 30 or 40 locations, and I say, hey, look, eventually you will graduate from QuickBooks, but my goal is to keep you on as long as possible, because the cost to change to the 365s or the NetSuites or anything else when you're going, that's a very expensive cost. And that requires a lot of manpower. And it's not for every restaurant. And so if I can get you to 30 or 40 or 50 locations before you really put the resources into making that conversion, well, I think that's a win-win for everybody. And so that's what my goal is with Fixe.
Who was your first other customer outside of the tacos?
My CPA my CPA that I've used forever, he had like a restaurant that was just doing okay. It was called Tuscan Sun. They're still a client, right? So they were like our first, I would say, referral outside of myself and Tacos 86. And they're just one location. But in that first year, like you said, when you're like growing the business, you're hustling, you're doing anything you can to get a client here and there, but that was our first one for sure.
And so they're still a customer, and then is it a monthly subscription business? Is it like an annual contract, or how do y'all handle that?
I believe that no restaurant wants to sign a yearly contract, because who knows what happens in the restaurant, right, a year from now, right? So we do month to month. We call it, a month to month agreement. You do have to give us, I think it's 60 days notice before you end up leaving us, just because we typically, the onboarding fees, we don't charge onboarding fees up front typically. And so in order to recoup that, we just say, hey, just make sure you're with us for a certain amount of time, and then give us 60 days notice if you end up leaving, and that's fine. But we rarely ever lose clients unless the restaurant closes, unfortunately. My thought process, and this is where I was really aggravated with bookkeeping in general, is that people weren't upfront with their pricing, right? And I get it. Like, bookkeeping is a tough thing to say, like, here's the price for, because one restaurant may be easy as heck, and another restaurant might require a little bit more TLC. And it's hard to kind of put those into confined buckets per se, but I think we've done a pretty good job of it. And so we charge a fixed price. And regardless, I mean, I know our name is called Fixe. That's not why we called it Fixe, but ultimately we charge a fixed price. We include the software, and we basically said, look, this is the best system that we can vouch for in order to give you the pricing that we're quoting you. Use the software that we're providing. This is all restaurant software that you're familiar with, QuickBooks Online, Margin Edge. It's all part of our suite. And if you adopt what we're telling you, then we could give you the best pricing available, because we do this for hundreds and hundreds of restaurants, and we're able to provide that value back to the customer.
Gotcha. Okay. You got your first customer through a referral from an accountant. How do you find new customers, Ryan? Is it mainly through referrals? I know you have a sales team. Like, what's the best channel to get people in the door?
Yeah. I think I used to say that like 50% of our business was like referrals or me pounding the pavement in the beginning. About 40%, we did invest into paid per click advertising, and it was working great in 2021. We actually paused it in 2022 because we couldn't keep up, I think, with the demand, which is obviously a good problem to have, so to speak. I will say we continue to do it, and it continued to help us pay dividends, especially to get groups outside of Los Angeles, of course. But it is more expensive today than it was when we were first starting. There's no doubt about it. But this year, we've been really focused on partnerships. We have partnerships with other restaurant software companies that we're really trying to, form and really kind of nurture in order to give each other business. And then we also have a lot of partnerships with like CPAs and restaurant consultants, because ultimately a restaurant consultant is paid for their advice, essentially. And one of their advices is great bookkeeping and automation to help with that at a very fair price. Becomes a win-win in that relationship too. And then lastly, we have, existing restaurants, just expansion, but consultants, CPAs, pay-per-click advertising, partnerships, and then, straight up referrals.
Pay-per-click, is that that's Google, or do you do like Facebook advertising or anything? Like a lot of independent restaurants are on Facebook.
We do Google, and we do Facebook and Instagram or Meta. We haven't done TikTok yet, and we haven't paid for ads on YouTube yet, although I think we will do that in the near future. Obviously, with your podcast and everything, you have a ton of content out there, and we're trying to produce a little bit more content on our own YouTube channel, which we think will help with our search and things of that. But ultimately, it's Google and it's Meta. In the beginning, it was like all Google, and we got very low clicks from Meta, and now it's kind of flipped. Now we get like way more clicks on Meta, and then Google is much less. Although I will say the quality of the demos that we get from the Google ads tend to be better quality demos than we do from the Meta ads. The Meta ads, we get a lot of spam, and you got to filter some of that out.
Interesting. Okay. So somebody clicks on that, they come to you, they sign up for a demo. Is that what they're doing?
Correct.
Okay. And then you have a team that, okay, so today at 2:00, I'm doing a demo for this restaurant that clicked on our Instagram ad or whatever.
Correct.
And then your goal is now, do you give them, so they don't have, you wouldn't be able to do a free trial like what we do. I'm trying to think. So you've got to basically get them to say, okay, this looks good. Let's do this.
Basically, yes. Unfortunately, see, the advantage in your business is that there's probably not a ton of onboarding that's involved. You get some information, you sign them up, and then you can give them. With us, there is a heavy lift in the onboarding. And so we understand that. Like changing your bookkeeper, I'm trying to think of like an analogy for it, but it is not an easy lift. And we're pretty upfront about that. I think we do a really good job of streamlining the onboarding. And we always say, look, we can move as quickly as you give us information, right? If you're not giving us access to what we need access to, it's going to draw out a little bit. But we typically say we could do it in about a week and get everything connected. But we can't really give you a free trial. But we can, again, we waive onboarding costs. We do a few other things, maybe some free cleanup costs if you haven't had good bookkeeping in prior months, and we can help you kind of get caught up. But they do the demo. Usually it takes like 2 or 3 calls. So a demo will happen. We have a quick conversation about what they're currently doing. And then we'll do a follow-up conversation where we show them all the software and how the process works and what the reporting looks like and how quickly they get it and all of that. And then they usually sign up after that.
If they don't sign up, what is typically the reason they don't sign up?
That's a good question. I think that they don't sign up. One, if it's a very small restaurant and they don't have a ton of infrastructure right then and there. Usually with restaurants, it could just be a timing thing, right? Like they could have clicked on the demo late at night and say, oh, like I need this. And then when they actually like wrap their head about making that change and doing it, they're like, oh, I'm just going to like push it down the road a little bit, right? Now, as we go up market and we deal with not just like 1, 2s, and 3s, and we go to like 10 and 20s, they usually have like an internal team, like a controller or something like that. And sometimes we are replacing the current bookkeeping that they're doing maybe themselves. And my argument to them is like, hey, like you guys shouldn't be doing the bookkeeping. You guys should be analyzing and making actions from the bookkeeping. Get the data off of your plate, put it on ours, and then let us handle that. And then you guys actually act as a controller or act as like your director of finance. And so ultimately, yeah, there's a little bit more of like a sales cycle when it comes to those groups, but it's just about timing, about when they're ready to like pull the trigger and, change their operation a little bit. But that's usually where it ends up going. We really rarely lose people to other, softwares or other accounting firms. That doesn't really happen that often. It's mostly like a timing thing. or it's mostly like when is the best time and place to make this change. So, or like I said, you get a small restaurant and they're just like, they do the demo and then they're like, oh, I'll just kick this down the road, and maybe you have to remind them about it, 6 months from now.
I mean, we have that a lot with our free trials. Somebody signs
Yeah.
up for a free trial. They're like, I got to do this. Because right now, like you said, 11 o'clock at night is their number one issue because they're dealing with the schedule and they don't want to deal with it. And then tomorrow is like their number 8 issue because 7 other things took priority. So we see that too. It's the
Yeah.
challenge with particularly with independent restaurants and, those 2, 3, 5, 8, 10, like there's just so many things going on. I mean, as an owner, it's like there's a million things you have to solve for in any given day. And so priorities shift and adjust. So, okay.
And I'll say one last thing, and maybe it kind of goes. So one of the things that I think we have struggled, but I think do a better job with lately, is that we provide you bookkeeping, we provide you QuickBooks Online, we provide you Margin Edge, we provide you our own dashboard that all layers on top of it, right? Some people will get in a demo and they're like, well, I already have QuickBooks and I already have Margin Edge or a competitor. Why do I need you guys? And I'm like, well, one, you shouldn't be wasting your time managing all that stuff and worrying about how all this stuff works together, right? And you shouldn't be wasting your time like logging into your bank account and reconciling. Like, we do that way more efficiently and we're way more knowledgeable in it than any independent restaurant or really any group out there. So why not outsource that to someone that's an expert into it? And so that also takes a little bit of convincing from time to time. They may have elements of our system already in place. And so we need to say, like, look, like, you shouldn't be managing any of this crap. You should be running your restaurants. Let us take care of it. And so that also becomes like a selling point, but then also I would say like a communication topic that we have to be clear about during the sales cycle.
Um, so R365, y'all, is obviously a competitor of
Correct.
y'all's. I mean, they have a lot, they have a very big system. It tends to be, it's an expensive solution and it tends to be for a lot of larger groups, although I do see them moving downstream more and more. How do you, what's the conversation when somebody's exploring them versus y'all?
Yeah.
Do you have customers that have R365, but also use you because they use you for your?
No, we won't take like that is a strict no. So we won't take any R3 customers. We'll convert them off of R365. And my goal is to keep them on our system before they need to graduate to a Restaurant 365 or to something else. So Restaurant 365 is software only, right? And what Restaurant 365 did is they tried, I'm not going to say try because they've obviously been very successful, but they replaced QuickBooks and they brought in other modules to make this, whole ecosystem, right? And my argument is they may be good at one thing, but they can't be good at all of those things, right? Because they just bought different components and kind of folded it under the Restaurant 365 umbrella. Don't get me wrong, there are advantages of having an all-in-one solution, and that's where our own dashboard that kind of lives on top of QuickBooks and Margin Edge, I think, can help with that as well. And some of the pitfalls that people think QuickBooks have, like with inventory management, which is solved by Margin Edge, or with period and multi-entity reporting, we solve that with our own dashboard. So ultimately, my thing about Restaurant 365 is that it takes a lot of time to onboard because it's not as automated as it seems to be. And when you meet with them in person, like we're going to go to the National Restaurant Show, and I did this last year, they're not very upfront with how long it takes to onboard. It takes like 4, 5, 6 months. It's expensive, like you said. So you got to pay a lot for this software. And then on top of it, you have to pay a bookkeeper to actually manage it for you, right? And with Fixe, you get all of that stuff, and we're doing the bookkeeping for you, and you're saving probably 50 to 60% of what you would be paying. So the last thing I'll say about this is, and I've told this to investors, Restaurant 365 replaced QuickBooks. In my opinion, QuickBooks Online is like the most user-friendly, low cost to entry accounting system out there. when Uber built an app for the iPhone, they didn't try replacing the iPhone and build like the Uber phone. They built an app that lives on top of the iPhone. And that's what Fixe is doing. We're building an app that lives on top of QuickBooks because I see QuickBooks as like the iPhone of accounting. And then we kind of just enhance that with our own dashboard.
Interesting. I got you. Makes a lot of sense. You mentioned you talk to investors. So how are you guys? You have raised venture capital, or is it friends and family?
So at the beginning, up from 2019 to 2023, it was just myself and Scott and a couple of loans that we paid back, and you bootstrap it and you get it all done. And we got to like about 150-ish locations that way. But at that point, we're like, we need to raise some money. We need to hire internal engineers, a sales team. We wanted to start. So we raised this seed round in 2023. The primary investor was called the New York Angels. It's an angel group out of New York City. And yeah, you kind of go on, it's like your own version of Shark Tank, so to speak. So you go on that and you're off and running. And we raised money from them. And now we're getting ready to do like our Series A round later this year. We've done a lot. We're up to just over 400 locations now. So we've been able to grow. I originally hired the wrong engineer and the wrong salesperson, but we quickly pivoted, and now we have an ex like head engineer from Intuit actually on our team, and I think we have the right team in place. And now it's time to add a little more fuel to that fire.
How many salespeople do you have?
I just got one. Well, me too, right? But I got one. I got Matt, who's also local and here in LA. And then I have another partnership person that we just brought on a few months ago who's kind of like part-time, but he's doing a great job too. But I've got Matt. I got one salesperson.
What is
How many salespeople do you guys have?
right now? Sort of me, but I mean, I do a lot of things kind of like you, right? That may change. So does he do how does he sell? Like, is he out selling? Is he trying to get larger groups, or is he doing it feet on the street, or is he pounding the phones, or all the above?
So it's a kind of all of the above right now. And I think that's one of our goals for this coming year and next year. So we get inbound demos and he does the inbound demo. And then if it's a big enough group where they require a little bit more TLC, then he'll bring me in to help kind of like close the deal, so to speak. But he does the outbound for us works well in Los Angeles. It doesn't work as well yet in other cities, except for, well, we need the pay-per-click advertising to drive outside of Los Angeles. But we have a few cities where we have about 15 or 20 clients, and those would probably be the next cities that I would hire a salesperson at. Because with bookkeeping, especially, you really want to have validation that someone else is using it and it's working because it's your money, right? That's like your money that people are responsible for. And having those other restaurants down the road that are using it to use as a validation tool for another salesperson, that becomes very helpful. But we've done the conference circuit. I'm sure like cost money. I don't know what the ROI is yet on that stuff. We do some outbound with lists and things like that. But we really need our leads to be like a little warmed up. And then I think we do a good job of closing them. We do have, the last thing I'll say, we have our food blogger, a blogger on our team that does all of our content on our website. His other job is he's an actual food blogger here in LA, and he has relationships with a lot of restaurants. So he's made a lot of good introductions for us, and then we've been able to like take him over the finish line.
Are there other firms that are like your size or doing something similar?
The only other firm that I would say that is kind of like somewhat similar, there's another firm actually out here in LA called Kitchen Sink. They've been around a little bit longer. Yeah, they've been around longer. Don't, I would say, focus on QuickBooks Online. They focus on QuickBooks, Sage, Xero. So they're kind of agnostic a little bit. And they really kind of target, I would say, finer dining establishments, mainly because their pricing is very, very high. So I'm not going to dispute like the quality of their work or anything like that. But I will just say like our pricing is way more favorable to most restaurants out there because because we are so specific on what we do and what we provide, we're able to really streamline the pricing in order to get that value back to the restaurant.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. I think, yeah, I have heard of them. So you got yourself a really cool, unique business, man. Do you, seems like we should be talking about having Schedulefly as part of that dashboard you've got there.
Yeah, for sure. We're about to launch like our partnership dashboard, and I would love this. I'd love to promote Schedulefly as like a scheduling, as our solution for that. In fact, my director of finance, Dan, who we brought on a few months ago, he's used you. He's very familiar with you guys. He's used you guys
Oh, okay.
before in other restaurants. Yeah.
Yeah, because it would seem like maybe there's like, okay, well, other info in your dashboard that you've got, and you've got margin edge info in there, and you may want to know what your scheduled labor is, or, things like that. So, okay, well, am I missing that, or is that right? Like, wouldn't that be valuable to have?
It's totally valuable, right? Like we have.
We were essentially after the same audience, right? Right. People outgrow, as you say, graduate, which is a better word. Like, they get to a point where they need more because they've gotten big enough that, and they'll go to like R365. And most of the time they go and they're like, because they don't want the scale. Like, they like our scheduling a lot better, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
so expensive that it's like, well, we kind of need to, we need to do it all in one place. But yeah, that's fine though. Like I always say, like we're lucky because we hit the employee, right? Like, so the employee that works for some group that used to be kind of small and fun and had a great culture that gets more and more corporate as they grow and starts deploying more of these top-down tools, they end up leaving because it's like gotten too corporate, if you will. And then but they go somewhere when they're like using spreadsheets for schedules. They're like, guys, like you should use Schedulefly. This is crazy, right? So we're lucky to have the employee as our, like, when you ask about salespeople, they're kind of our salespeople in a lot of ways because they move around a lot, but we're lucky to benefit from that. That's a difference. Like that wasn't intentional, but we're lucky. Whereas some server's not going to go, oh, you should use Fixe. Like they're going to be like, dude, you should use Schedulefly.
Yeah, no, but you do say something that's like smart, that's very informative there. It's like we're building Fix like our own dashboard in order to dumb down the financials for the operators themselves. Like I don't expect the operators to log into QuickBooks or those things, and so we're trying to create their financial reporting to be very streamlined and frictionless, so that the restaurant managers can understand their numbers better. And I think that's what we're trying to do for Fix, and I think that's kind of similar to like what you're doing on the Schedulefly side.
Yep, for sure. But so you've got nice growth. You're getting ready to raise another round, and you've got yourself a really good niche, especially that you're built on top of QuickBooks. That makes a ton of sense because I mean I hear that all the time. Like, oh, we use QuickBooks.
Right. They use QuickBooks and they don't know how to set it up. They don't know how to use it. They don't have the time. And it's like, hey, we'll take care of all that and we'll give you, a great, software suite in order to run your business.
Well, here's one of the things that, and I would say this to, like, your potential investors, your current and your potential investors, is something that I hear a lot at Schedulefly I mean, we've been doing this 18 years and I talk to restaurant owners all the time on this podcast and just talking to our customers. And what they tell me is they say, well, money was free for like a decade. And there was a lot of technology that was developed by somebody who never worked in a restaurant and funded by people who never worked in restaurants. And then they're out here trying to sell it to me. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what we need. You've got, your origin story. I mean, ours is similar. It's like you had a problem that you solved for yourself. And now you're trying to solve that for your peers that clearly have the same problem. That is very compelling versus like, we're smart. We think restaurants should use
Yeah.
this. Therefore, we're going to build it for them and tell them they should use it. And we're going to get people that are also smart like us and believe that we're right. Now, that's going to come home to roost the next few years because that was easy when money was like basically free. It ain't anymore. And so I think there's, not that I want anything back, but I think there's going to be, unfortunately, a lot of restaurant tech companies that get gobbled up or go away or whatever because they weren't, they didn't really understand what a restaurant owner needs. You understand that. You're solving your own problem. That's a very compelling narrative that I would think would be important to investors
Yeah, I appreciate
and to
that.
customers.
Yeah, and the customers. And that's like where I can't say enough that me still owning restaurants today has been such a great attribute in helping us sell Fixe, even though they know I'm not like in the day to day running restaurants or anything like that. But they know that like we're restaurant people. Start like Matt on my sales team, my head of operations, my head of finance, like all these people on our team, we're all restaurant people. Start. We all grew up in the industry, and yeah, we taught ourselves or we kind of had enough experience in order to be very good at the bookkeeping and accounting. But like that's the whole premise here is that like yeah we can talk we know what it takes to operate restaurants. I think when it comes to investors, what we need to do is we need to say like this is a service that is necessary in any business, not just restaurant businesses. And there's a lot of services out there that you see like AI this and AI that, and it's like a thin layer of technology that really doesn't give like really actionable insights. What we're trying to do is we're like, hey, look, we knew we have like a proof of product. We know it's a little bit service heavy at the moment, but we're starting to automate more and more things to kind of nip at the service elements of what we're doing because we understand all of the nuances within our specific industry. And eventually we will get to the point where I wouldn't say that the bookkeeping becomes more and more automated. We like to say it's like 80% automated right now. We'd obviously like to get to 95 or 99. But the service-based businesses, eventually someone is going to solve to automate a lot of it as long as they get people in there who are very, very, I would say, patient and understanding of the business that they're operating within, right? And so I think that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to get to that point. And I think we will cross that threshold of becoming, a quote unquote tech company versus a service based company, so to speak. But it is a combination of the two, and we're hopefully heading in the right direction.
Big picture. Talk to me about what you're seeing out there. You've got clients and do you have clients like all over in all 50 states now? Or is it, I mean, I know it's obviously concentrated out there, but like, is it
I would
concentrated
say,
in the
yeah, I would say
Southwest?
like no, no. I mean, concentrated in Southern California for sure, but outside of California, we probably have probably in like 30 of the 50 states, more or less. And then we have a few cities that we tend to, San Francisco, Denver, New York. We have a handful there and a bit in Texas as well. But yeah, I mean, it's all over. We recently got like 2 locations in Alaska this year, so that was kind of cool.
What's your thoughts about, just, and you've got access to, you just talk at a high level, but how are restaurants doing right now?
I would say they are struggling a bit in terms of especially in California, it's the cost of doing business has just gone up astronomically. Obviously, I'm in Los Angeles, so we've had the fires. The fires obviously were a big impact at the beginning of the year. It seems like everyone's recovered more or less from that, unless you had a restaurant directly in the impacted neighborhoods. But I think the cost of labor is something that people are very much struggling with across the board. I think, in my own restaurants, this is a funny story actually. So we buy some of our produce from Mexico, right? From limes and
Yeah.
avocados and stuff like that. And like 6 months ago, or not 6 months ago, or a few months ago, when the tariff talks started happening, our avocado supplier said, "Oh, everything's going to go up 20%." And Victor, my partner, is like, "What the f? Like the tariff's not in place yet. Like you can't just raise it without the tariff being in place." So he pushed back at them, and he's like, "Yeah, like oh yeah, you're right. I don't have to raise my price quite yet." But I have a feeling there's a few restaurants that are probably getting, like for a better word, bent over by their suppliers when like they say there's a tariff in place, but maybe there really isn't quite yet. And so there's a lot of that talk too. And that's where like the suppliers need to be a little bit more honest about what's actually happening. But that did happen with us, which I laughed about it with my partner Victor. But yeah, I mean the labor is the biggest thing, 100%. The cost of labor.
Do y'all serve franchise organizations or is it just independent?
No, we're a franchise. We've got a few Taco Bell, a group that has some Taco Bells. We have there's a smaller franchise groups, like there's a group out of here called Spitz. There's like 30 locations. We service all of them. We have a Pokeworks. We have Pepper Lunch. We're doing a couple locations of the new group that's out here, expanding right now, and a few other franchisees. It's great because for the franchisees, or I say for the franchisors, they're relying on the franchisees to get them consistent financials. And the franchisees, they usually have like, an uncle or their aunt trying to do the books, and then they're trying to like get them the financials. And the franchisor is like, what the hell? Like, none of this looks right or accurate or anything like that. So we really try to grow in the franchise systems where hopefully we can be like the preferred solution for the franchisees.
Yeah. You and I need to have some offline conversations, man, because we're growing a lot in that space too. Where, we have very happy franchisee customers, and then we try to get, I mean, I've actually leveraged the podcast to build relationships with some CEOs where we go, like Big B Coffee is one, right? So the CEO comes on here, I get a relationship with him that's not about schedule fly. It's about sharing his or her story, but it builds credibility so that we can go to them and go, how do we get in your organization as a preferred
Mhm.
provider? A lot easier than going, kind of top down than going bottom up and trying to navigate through, having a few happy franchise customers. Well, you really do both, but I think we can help each other a lot because we have the same, general audience.
Yeah, I think so too. Like we have a few chicken salad chicks out in New Orleans. We're trying to work our way in that system a little bit. And then there's a few other ones like Doghouse here in LA. They've got like 60 locations. We're doing like a test case with one of them. So, but yeah, but like going from like the top down 100%. And I think like you and I, like we're kind of in the same market, so to speak, in terms of like the ICP that we're trying to get to. And it's like for us with the bookkeeping, a little less than the like the scheduling software, like the franchisors can't dictate who you use as a bookkeeper because that's part of the ability to, run your own business as a franchisee. But they could strongly suggest, a preferred solution where the price is pre-negotiated, and that's where we come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think we're sort of in this, like there's, as you said, there's value in the all-in-one, and you got R365 kind of doing that. Toast is kind of trying to, buy up or build like everything in one place. And for some, that's fine. But there's a lot of people that are like, man, I want the best of this tool and the best of that tool and the best. And, if it's different providers, that's fine because we just want, we want to have the best available. But I think it's smart for companies like ours to help each other navigate this stuff or partner when we can or integrate when we can or whatever, because we also have a similar approach of like you guys are out there trying to solve a problem for restaurants and do it at a fair price and provide great service. There's other companies that are trying to sell a product to restaurants to grow and make money for their investors. And like we all have to make money for our investors, but it's just you got to put the customer first, I believe. If you're
Right.
helping a customer and you're making their business more successful and you're always focused on them, the other stuff takes care of itself, the success of your business.
I
So
agree.
I believe that thoroughly. It's the immeasurable stuff that like really matters the most, which is the intention behind it, the care for the customer, like treating them authentically, not hoodwinking them, not like throwing things into contracts they don't know about, not promising one thing and delivering another, but then you got them kind of handcuffed and it's hard to unwind. That's not you're serving hospitality people like as it's what you've lived your whole life and what you wanted to do. Well, why did you want to do that? Because you want to take care of other people. Well, I find it odd sometimes that there are so many people that serve restaurants that are they don't understand if you provide hospitality to restaurants, they see it and you will win them for life. Like I can promise you, we have so many customers that are like, they get people trying to sell them, like, and they're like, guys, you might have more bells and whistles. You don't understand. Like, it ain't
Mhm.
about that. It's about the people that like run this business. Like, we love them. We're loyal to them. Like, good for you if you got better, more, whatever. That's not what our decision's always made on. It's based on like doing business with people that we trust, value, and loyalty is important to us. Same way our customers come to us for the same reasons.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of my friends just down the street opened up like a new restaurant and it's like doing great. Like it's like hot restaurant. I asked Jeremy, I'm like, how many like are you do you let your servers just like give out free like free desserts and free appetizers just to build the kind of that clientele? And he's like, absolutely. Like we're in hospitality. Like people have to get unexpected gifts out of it, right? And so like for us, like every time I hear people complain about bookkeepers or about their other solutions, it's always like, we try to ask for things and like they wouldn't respond or they wouldn't own up to a mistake that they did. And like for us, I'm just like, look, I would be naive to think we do everything perfectly. I know we don't do everything perfectly, but I know we're going to act quickly if we know we made a mistake and or if a client says, "Hey, like we have a question about this," like let's be as transparent as possible. And so that's kind of like our mentality. If we think we made a mistake, or if you think we made a mistake, then like let's make it up to you. Let's figure out how to win this whole situation because it doesn't make sense in order to like kick the can down the road or brush it under the rug because eventually you'll probably end up firing us as a result. And so that's how we've been really good about not losing clients because, stuff happens from time to time and we're going to make sure we make it up to them 100% of the time. And I think it's like the same thing. Like you got to treat them like go to the clients first, go to the customers first, and then work your way up from there. Because if you don't, you're going to start losing clients faster than you bring them on.
Man, you
Yeah.
got to play the long game, man.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like, take good care of people, do right by people, be authentic, be honest, treat them right. It all comes back around. I can, I mean, 18 years of doing this, I am 100% sure that's the case.
And
So,
especially in like this industry, like restaurant people know when others are treating them fairly and are treating them with like hospitality and they have like good intentions, right? Because they're doing the same thing to their clients in the
that's
restaurant.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, they recognize it because it's what they live for, and they're surprised by it. To be honest, man, like it's so rare these days, just in our culture in general, that when you provide like really great service and you pick up the phone when they call and you respond quickly and you own your mistakes, they're like, the bar, unfortunately, Ryan, is so low. I tell my friends this all the time, like the bar is so low. It doesn't matter what business you're in, the bar is so low for support and service now. If you just do the basic things that like make common sense that you would do if your customer was your friend or your family member, you're going to win because like nobody does that. Like, nobody does that these days. And it just, it sets you apart. So, hey man, I'm going to let you roll. I am so stoked that we got to have this conversation. I want to keep this conversation going offline and figure out how we can perhaps help each other to help, our customers and make their lives a little bit easier and better and save them some money.
Happy to do it. Would love to talk more offline. I really appreciate the time today.
You bet, man. Have a good one.
Have a
Talk to
good
you.
one soon.